Hey, Martha, we all know that mergers and acquisitions within the banking industry, are definitely on the rise. What do you think are the key differences between a merger of equals and just an acquisition?
That's a great question, Alan. I think I would look to today's guest for the best answer to that question. She also really gets you thinking about why you should always build a strong foundation for your brand internally. And the answer may surprise you.
Hello, and welcome to Bank Marketing Today by Via. I am Alan Greer, and together with Martha France, we are interviewing bank marketing leaders about current trends, new marketing technologies, branding, and the overall state of the banking industry. We will be joined from time to time by additional co-hosts and experts.
In this episode, we spoke to Erin Pryor, Executive Vice President, Chief Marketing Officer at First Horizon Bank. We discussed mergers, data, marketing budgets, building a brand, and a lot more. So let's get to it. We hope this episode of Bank Marketing Today helps simplify your marketing tomorrow. Hello, I am Martha France, and I am joined today by my co-host, Alan Greer. And we are truly excited to be talking with Erin Pryor, Executive Vice President, Chief Marketing Officer at First Horizon Bank. Welcome to the Bank Marketing Today podcast, Erin.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Very excited. I kind of will start off with the first question, because I noticed that, you've been with First Horizon for over a year, and obviously you've been with other financial institutions as well. But how did you get into banking? And then secondly, what drew you to First Horizon?
I always tell people, if you would have asked me about 12 years ago if I would work in banking, I would have literally been like, no way. But, life has an interesting way of working out. So I moved to New York City after college. So I played volleyball in college. And I told my parents that I was either going to make it there or I'd be home in like 5 months. And it depended on whether I was going to get a contract in Europe or move to New York. So I ended up moving to New York. I worked in journalism. So I worked for the New York Times, for Sports Illustrated, and a couple of other magazine companies. At one point, I had moved to California, and I was I'm kind of ready to see what's next. And I happened to meet a bank CEO who had started and sold his first bank. He was a former Wall Street investment banker, and he had started a bank. He had sold that in the early to mid 2000s, kind of saw what was happening with the banking industry around 2008 and decided he wanted to start a bank to, take it back, right? So he hired one person or two people, generally when he started something that didn't have banking background, to really teach his way of banking. So he offered me the management trainee role. And it was kind of one of those things where you're like, I don't know about this, but he said, give it a year. If you don't love it, you can leave. And it was kind of one of those things where the door opens and I just felt like I really should walk through it. And while I was there, I was at Opus Bank. We recapitalized a bank in the South Bay of Los Angeles with about 5 offices and about 460 million. And by the time I left, it was 7 billion, and we were in 3 or 4 states. And I had the pleasure of working with Brad Davis, who was the former chief marketing officer for Washington Mutual. And he left well before the financial crisis, but he helped build that brand from 30 billion to 300 billion. So I worked with him for about 6 years. And then I went to a fintech. It was like a wealth management / fintech, a B2B2C called United Capital, who ultimately sold to Goldman Sachs. From there, I went to USAA. And when First Horizon came knocking, I was like, I don't know. But the opportunity was so amazing. The two companies, they were in the middle of a merger of equals with Iberia Bank. And there was just a lot of opportunity from a marketing, from the brand all the way into performance marketing. And it was an opportunity, and has been an opportunity, to build something and to build a team and to really flex a new muscle for the organization and capitalize on the great work and the wonderful brand that existed both from Iberia and First Horizon for the last 150 plus years. So kind of a long-winded way, but I got here over a period of time, and there's been a lot of different opportunities, but I'm really grateful for all the wonderful people and the mentors I've had in my career to this point.
I know you're in Texas, and the bank is headquartered, First Horizon's in Memphis. So, being remote, and I think obviously, with COVID and everything, it kind of created a whole new trend, but, I don't know that that's really going to change. But I'm wondering, how you feel about that? How does that work for you? Do you think that trend's going to continue on?
My team jokes around and they're like, where's Erin today? It's like, where's Waldo? They said they were going to get me a red and white striped shirt, and it has changed. And I think there is more of an openness for remote work. I think there's pros and cons. There's pros of being together too. And there's some of the things that happen when you're in the room and sitting face to face and brainstorming and collaborating. There's a lot of benefit of being with people and getting that energy. But I also believe that I believe as globally have had to learn the discipline and how to work around and be together virtually as well. I'm personally in a little bit of a hybrid situation. So I kind of come and go. I also travel a lot to the markets and do other visits. But in regard to hiring, I also have been open to remote hires. So I've made a few key hires, and specifically even in my leadership team, to people who are remote. I think it helps to be in the footprint, but I think it's the new way of working, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Yeah, it definitely seems kind of like the hybrid approach is going to be here for a while. So I kind of like it, actually.
There's some days when you can hole up at home and just get a lot done too.
Right.
And there's not the distraction, even though there are wonderful distractions of, talking over coffee or somebody stopping in your office, or, if you're more of a collaborative workspace that, standing up and saying, hey, what can we do this? But there is, I think, a lot of benefit sometimes to be able to go home and just crank some stuff out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very
Well,
true.
the whole time I'm praying, my dog does not bark, So.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Erin, you mentioned a little bit ago the merger with Iberia Bank that was in progress as you were being hired. And even specifically, you mentioned that was a merger of equals. And I'm wondering, how is that different when two banks that are equals are coming together versus when a bank is acquiring a smaller bank? And what's been the impact on the marketing operation?
The difference is in the merger of equal, you're really coming together as two partners. I think even in acquisitions, you come together as partners. There's obviously a reason your people want to acquire you. I think with the MOE was a little bit different. It's a different conversation. So you're looking at some of the best practices and the best products and, how do the teams start to fit together? And I came in the middle of the MOE. So their announcement was made in January of 2019. And I started with the company in December of 2020. And their legal day one was in July of 2020. It's been a really great experience, but I think you have to understand that even when organizations have a lot of similarity, there's obviously also going to be differences. And culturally, I think you have to look at how do you bring everyone together? It's a partnership between the communications teams and the marketing teams and, all of those other things, but great brands are built internally. I think getting the buy-in and the alignment with all of the associates and employees is critical. Your external messaging has to match your internal process and experience. It's been a really interesting experience for me. And I think for the organizations bringing it together, it's almost like being a little bit of an entrepreneurial environment in a very storied and wonderful legacy institution. And technically, two legacy wonderful institutions that have come together to form, what is First Horizon today.
And as you described that, you talked about great brands being built internally. And I know when we spoke previously, you talked about great brands being operational. And I'm curious to delve a little bit more into what you mean by both of those terms. And are you saying that that's kind of really foundationally important as you're creating this customer experience?
It is, because as a marketer, we can create wonderful, beautiful, amazing campaigns that say everything we think they should say. But if the client is having a different experience, then there's going to be that disconnect. Think about great brands that you love or that really do have that long tenured loyalty. They have built an experience that you come to know and expect. I think that's what the critical piece is. We at First Horizon, we're a relationship-based bank. And we went through and over the past, 6, 8, 9 months, we reevaluated what are our purpose and our values, as the combined organization, so that we have everybody saying the same thing. When I started with the bank, I did probably over 100 one-to-ones meetings with, all the different constituents between the lines of business, my, internal partners, my entire team. And what was amazing was everyone was saying a version of the same thing and the foundation was there, but you need that critical mass so that everybody is buying into what the purpose of the organization is. And that becomes the cornerstone of your communication architecture so that you've got thousands of people saying the same thing and it becomes a force multiplier. It's aligning the organization internally, and then you create the marketing and your external campaigns and all those things off of what that wonderful experience is internally, or what the buy-in is internally as well.
I'm curious, as you talk about all the people that you talked to and all the different versions that you had there.
Yeah.
How challenging was it to get everybody aligned, or did it kind of naturally fall into place as you were tackling that?
It's taken time. I mean, Rome isn't built in a day. One of the things we had the conversation was, this is not a campaign, a one and done campaign. Your internal campaign is always on, and it's not over a 3-month or a 6-month period. It's forever. We're still in process of doing, some of the rollout, and, we've done some associate outreach. And I was laughing, there was a big box behind me earlier, and it's got a special celebration, and it's a coffee celebration around the two companies coming together, and just really trying to instill that and aligning with your HR partners and our DEI partners and our corporate communications partners so that there are consistencies and the purpose and the values thread throughout your entire organization. And how do you tie that to client experience? So ours is own the moment. So no matter what area of the organization you work in, not just the client facing bankers, that if you're in credit or the digital teams or technology, you have in play a part in the entirety of the client experience. And so I think it's just critical so that everybody realize they're a part of it, and you all own a piece of it. We spent a lot of time over the past 6-8 months really rolling that out and trying to bring that together.
Leading banks partner with Via to simplify direct marketing and increase the speed of marketing execution. Via's software makes it easy for bank associates across geographies to access and order compliant, locally relevant marketing materials. Our production team streamlines the execution of campaigns across digital and print channels, resulting in a more efficient and effective bank marketing operation. To learn more, visit viasystems.com, and that's VYA systems with an S.com, or request a demo at viasystems.com/bank marketing.
So Erin, talking about getting everybody on the same page, your institution has banking centers operating in 12 states. So how do you ensure that both everybody's on the same page, speaking that same message, but at the same time that you're relevant in those diverse communities?
There's a lot of things we can do today in marketing around personalization and geo-targeting and more localized tactics, if you will. So some of the things we work on is we have different visuals. Maybe when you come to the website, we're highlighting different clients in the commercials and the testimonials based on where you are. Someone in North Carolina may not feel as connected to something that maybe we would roll out in Miami. You still have to have that consistency. It's like having the playbook where everybody's got the same playbook, but you can call some audibles in there as well. So there's consistency in the underlying current is the same and the underlying message is the same, but you call the audible for what is right for your market or for the specific target. I don't think you can have a one size fits all message or campaign across 12 states and varying geographies and varying lines of business. And so I think today with the personalization and some of the segmentation, other things you can do, you can have that consistent current and still be relevant to the areas that or the prospects that you're targeting.
That makes sense.
It does. And kind of a great segue too, because, I know you have maybe a little bit over 8,000 associates there at First Horizon, 490 locations. So I'm curious, tell us a little bit about your marketing team without giving, any secret sauces here, anything like that. But how do you structure all that?
When I came into a team with a lot of fantastic, smart, capable marketers. And so I feel very lucky and fortunate for that. What we did is we looked at, where are we today? Where do we want to go? And where do we think we have the most opportunity and maybe some opportunity to bring in some expertise in certain areas? And so what we did is we restructured. And I say we because I really believe in the teamwork. I don't do everything myself. And so without a really strong team behind you and with you, I don't believe that you're going to be as successful. And so I really brought around my leadership along with that. And we looked at, just what is it we want to accomplish? We set it up to where we implemented an integrated team. And so the integrated team, and a lot of times integrated can mean different things to different places, but is really aligned with the businesses. So when I came in, I heard a lot of, we don't really know what marketing does. We don't see results. But I did see a huge opportunity for us to realign with the business and the company, the overarching strategies, and tie the marketing to it so that the lines of business and some of the bankers could see themselves while we also have a brand focus. So we set up an integrated team. So there is a specific leader for each line of business that works directly with the lines of business to understand what they're trying to do, build those go-to-market plans, and then brings that back to the marketing team to execute. We also have a brand strategy. I walked into a team with an excellent marketing technology stack. I think that was a question, especially coming from my previous employer. What are we going to have? And we had a full stack, which was amazing. So we had the MarTech and operations group. And what we needed to build out was, and really flex some new muscle here, was around digital marketing. So, your paid media, the social media, and the website, and then also our analytics and insights. We had just a lot of opportunity there to really set up the performance marketing and to give the transparency that was needed to a lot of our partners to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is why. And make informed decisions. I think a lot of times, that sometimes we and institutions make decisions based on what we think or feel and not necessarily informed by data. And then sometimes, you can also die by data, and so it's like finding that happy balance. And so really trying to set up, showing the marketing ROI, how we are performing, but also to really understand our clients and to get that insight into what do they need and how are they behaving and interacting so that we can tie it all together. Utilizing our CRM, pulling in our paid media into that, and just putting together that 360 view of not only marketing, but the client as well.
Yeah, that's great. I know in our company, Martha's really good at pulling all that together. And I always get so frustrated when I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I think, oh, for sure, this is the way it's going to be, and I'm proven wrong. So, but it's so important. It is fascinating. It's actually kind of fun to get all that, providing the data is good. Yeah, for sure. So, what about externally? What are your marketing challenges, and how are you addressing those externally today?
The landscape is always changing in banking. It's viewed on a lot of scales as a commodity. It's a very crowded market right now. So we have to differentiate on our expertise. And we've also got to be, differentiate on our expertise externally, but proving the efficacy of marketing internally. I think that's probably the biggest challenge today, is looking at who are we going to compete with? Well, who's our target? Who are we really going to compete with? And how do we win? And then positioning ourselves, utilizing our client experience, utilizing the different tools that we have, the bankers, as I said, the operational component of the brand, and then aligning it so that, we make sure that we really genuinely are delivering on that experience. A lot of people say, do you determine whether your organization is pushing technology first, or is it human to human? I think it's got to be a combination, or at least, in our model today, I think that's critical. I think digital is fantastic. And I think people really want to interact digitally and to be able to take care of some of their things. I mean, we're just in a different world, and it accelerated through the pandemic, even more so, I think, than anybody expected. But at the same time, you also want that human touch, especially when you're making big decisions. I mean, finances can be scary for a lot of people. Our purpose is to provide capital and counsel. I think it's critical to have that advice and that ability to give that advice as well, because you can get money from anywhere.
That's true. And kind of getting that human to human focus is so important, and kind of leads to my next question. Earlier, you talked about your marketing organization and that you have leaders focused on the lines of business. And in banking, there does tend to be a very line of business focused approach. And so I'm wondering, how do you balance that with the customer focused approach?
It's again, the collaborative nature. I think with marketing, you're going to be more successful internally and externally if you collaborate with your partners. So it's like, again, product, digital, aligning everybody and getting on the same page. But at the end of the day, no one's going to buy your product if it's not right for them. And so aligning the strategies for your product strategies and your value propositions and all of those things around the right target, and looking at what is really the next best action. And you can have the best interest of the client in all the different lines of business. I think ultimately, you got to look, you got the brand, we talked a little bit about brand awareness and some of the things from the top of the funnel, but you can also look at, the performance marketing. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier around analytics and insights. It's just critical to have those things. The insights, I believe, are what will set you up for success within your segmentation and some of those pieces around the behavioral. It's the quantitative and the qualitative. And those together will help you know your client better than anybody else. And that's what helps. It's keeping the client at the center of the relationship.
Can we build on that a little bit further in terms of your vision, in terms of data and analytics? You talked about customer segmentation, but then there's also the measurement and improving the internal ROI. Can you say a little bit more about that?
When we have budget discussions, I've said, I can spend all the money you want me to spend. You give it to me and I could spend it, but I want to be a good fiduciary of the dollars, right? So I think the critical piece is you want to make sure that your spend is driving in and converting into clients or converting into next best product. So it goes back to, you can be so much more effective and efficient down the funnel, if you're utilizing a lot of those data and analytics and the insights and really watching and optimizing and ensuring that you're putting quality leads into the funnel for your bankers or into the digital channels for conversion in those products or lines of business as well. So I think that's critical for the success of marketing within an organization. My goal is that marketing becomes viewed as a revenue generator rather than an expense. I've had those conversations. I've gone to some of my biggest challengers who are like, marketing, I don't know. Is it just about a flyer? And said, well, I don't know. Here's your opportunity. And if we convert 1% based on the lifetime value or the cost per product, here's what we can drive. And they're like, oh, okay. So it's setting it up. It's getting everybody on the same page. And I think I feel really fortunate here at First Horizon. There's been we have a lot of support with marketing. And I think that helps a ton too. There's a lot of support. Like they're embracing it. The organization wants to utilize it. And, I think, and so we've gone out and found some power users and some advocates and, kind of figuring out, how do we build that? Let's show everybody what we can do. And then we'll just continue to build upon it.
I think what you're talking about is so much about marketing trying to overcome that arts and crafts reputation, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that you've got some believers there and that you continue to build that advocacy is a good way to do that.
I always say marketing's an art and a science. And a lot of people like to focus on the art because it's subjective, and the science is not. When we bring the facts and you're transparent, that's where the magic happens. I'm pretty open with the organization in general. Like, everything we do is not going to work. And that's okay. As long as we're falling forward, that's okay. We'll figure it out. We can optimize. We can switch gears pretty quickly, but we're going to be transparent whether it works or not. And I think that's how you build the trust within the organization as well.
I think that's good. And I think between you, Erin, and Martha, you handled that very well, Because I'm sure when you have those conversations, you got to be thinking, you must be kidding me if you don't think marketing is out there important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's like, is there a reason there are commercials? And, so
Yeah.
it works. It works.
Yeah.
But, I was curious about the technologies, technology you may be excited about. Are there any like existing or anything maybe kind of on the horizon that you're very excited about?
I think the opportunity that we have, and I think marketing in most organizations has today, is connecting the technology and the ability to connect the different pieces to understand the totality of the relationship. I think there's a lot of opportunity in personalization and getting really good at that and really understanding what is next for the clients. I think some companies are already doing it very well. I'm really excited about that from a marketing perspective. From the banking technologies, there's just so much happening right now. You got a lot of neobanks popping up. You've got crypto. I could name 100 different things. And I think you just have to, again, it goes back to keeping your client at the center. Any organization can do anything, but you can't do everything at once. And so really prioritizing what is important to the client. And the same thing for all the marketing technology I mentioned. Prioritizing what do we think is most important? Let's not boil the ocean. Let's try to take a couple bites at a time.
One thing that I wanted to go back to as well, when you just talked earlier about falling forward and that whole like test and learn, because I think sometimes you can spend so much time trying to perfect something. And in this day and age, you've got to be moving and moving forward. So wanted to see if you had anything more to say about your test and learn process, or just then in general, like when you do fail, how do you recover and then get buy-in for approval for the next idea?
Again, it goes back to the test and learn. So you're doing experimentation all the time. And rather than ripping a Band-Aid across your entire footprint, maybe pick a market or two and test it out so that you can maybe identify areas of opportunity or optimization early. I'm also a firm believer in the 80-20 rule. To your point, if you want to get it to 100%, sometimes that could take forever. If it's 80% good enough, let's get it out, measure it, and then we can continue to improve it. At the end of the year, we had some journey work that was happening and we were ready to launch. It was, a bunch of different assets. They sent it to me and we all started talking and I was like, some of the language in here could be tighter. There was, there were some other pieces and we were kind of like, and they were like, well, do you want us to redo it? And I told them, I was like, no, I want you to go and we can get that out the door. And then in January and February, we can optimize. Progress over perfection, right? And then, if you have something that doesn't work or something that maybe didn't work as well as you would have liked, it's what are the learnings and share them out. Because usually when something fails, it probably didn't fail 100%. It may have been a component that failed or one or two tactics in it didn't perform as well as you would have liked, So it's like, I think if you're open about it and saying, hey, here's what we did, here's how we think we can do it better, and we're going to try to, continually optimize. I generally believe you can still keep the trust. It's the transparency with the organization. I think you're in a worse place if you don't tell them about the things that aren't working, because then they're just not going to trust it. Or if something does majorly blow up, then you're going to be like, oh, what do I do here?
Yeah, you really get in trouble when you try to bury those failures. That's for sure.
This is kind of a broad question, I guess, but where do you think the banking industry is going as a whole?
Well, I think that is a very timely question. So we recently, this week actually, announced that we have entered into a definitive agreement to be acquired by TD Bank Group. And so, I think that this, again, perception of one, I think you're probably going to see a little more of that. I mean, it kind of depends on the regulatory environment, but it's a pretty saturated space and it gets to be tough competition. And I think, the way a lot of the institutions will grow is, I think, consolidation.
Yeah, that was big news. That was big news.
Very exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
How about your knowledge? I mean, with anybody, has in their profession always seeking ways to expand their knowledge. Where do you go for that? I
have a couple of different places. One, first and foremost, I always go to my kitchen cabinet. So that is my group of people that, some of it are mentors, some of it are peers from former institutions. Some of them, are just people I've networked along the way. I feel like you can learn so much from those who you surround yourself with. So if I usually have a big question, I'm like, who can I call on this list? And also I just really follow a lot of what those people are doing. I love podcasts, and I do like the Harvard Business Review. But I think what I think is critical is, and especially as we're talking specifically on bank marketing, I think it's important to learn about things that are happening outside of banking. You can learn a lot from, even what mass retail or, any industry. I think it's just important to be open to expanding. I always tell people, like, when I'm not learning, it's probably because I will not be living any longer. I think it's critical to always be learning and to always be absorbing and understanding and really listening to what's out there.
And I do think looking at other industries, you never know what nuggets you might find.
Totally. Well, and you know where else I learned is my team, my own team.
Yeah, sure.
I believe, surround yourself with great, smart people. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And I'm definitely not always the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, I've never had that problem myself.
So it's really, learning. They all have really, expertise in certain areas. And I learn a lot from them.
That's awesome. Well, I'd say that's a great note for us to close on here. So thank you, Erin, for taking the time to speak with us today. Alan and I both enjoyed the discussion. And Erin, we wish you continued success at First Horizon.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation.
What a great discussion. I love the concept of building the brand foundation internally, no matter what your industry.
I couldn't agree more. I also felt that her approach to data and being transparent with ROI is a lesson for any marketer. I also thought her experience with being involved in a merger of equals and how it compares to acquisition was very timely.
Yeah, for sure. I also like when she said that she could spend all the money, but she wants to be a good fiduciary steward. I can also spend all the money. What do you think about maybe getting a helicopter for Via?
Prove the ROI based on some data, and then we can talk, Alan.
Thanks to our listeners for joining us. We really appreciate it. Be sure to subscribe and give us a review. We would love that. If you have any ideas or topics, questions you'd like us to cover in the future, just email us at marketing@viasystems.com. Thank you so much.